Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And here's your host, Ben Adelberg.
And once again, welcome to the Back of the Range Golf Podcast. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 146. Another late episode this week, yes, I know, but I've been preparing to get the hell out of town for a week, and well, you know how it goes. I hope that you all are planning on having a safe, fun, and relaxing holiday weekend. Whatever that means for you and your family, do the right thing. I know some beaches are closed. I'm not even going to talk about coronavirus. Just do the thing. Wash your hands, be safe, get out on the golf course if you can, and spend time with your family and friends. So, I had a golf trip to Kiowa canceled during Memorial Day weekend. Still pretty bitter about that, but fortunately, I have some good friends up the coast that are going to hook me up with some incredible golf for the next week or so. So, I'm heading up to TPC Sawgrass to play Dyes Valley. Actually have a game set up with some friends that were former guests of the podcast, so you'll learn more about that soon. I'm heading to South Carolina to play Bulls Bay, Chichessie Creek, and Daniel Island. And then on the way back, I figured, well, might as well tee it up in a Florida State Golf Association Mid-Senior Championship in Tampa. So hopefully I'll have some pretty cool pictures, maybe some videos. Make sure that if you have not started following on social media, this would be a perfect time to do so. We're on Facebook, Twitter. A lot of the stuff is going to be on Instagram. The handle for the Instagram page is the Back of the Range Podcast. You know the drill. All of that is available on the website, along with every single episode. If you haven't figured it out yet, the website is thebackoftherange.com. A few Mojo updates. Haley Moore, standout from Arizona. She led her team to the national championship in 2018. She racked up another win on the Cactus Tour. She's keeping her game sharp and looking for a chance to break through on the LPGA Tour. Davis Riley and I had a lot of fun during our episode making fun of Will Zalatoris. Apparently he doesn't notice because he's unconscious right now in the Korn Ferry Tour. The first three tournaments after the restart, Will has a T6, T3, and a solo fourth. And at the halfway point in this week's event in Colorado, he's leading by 2. So we'll just stay away from Zalatoris, let him do his thing. Doc Redman and Scott Stallings are off to really nice starts at the Rocket Mortgage in Detroit, so hope they can keep that going. And then we come to Gene Elliott, former guest on the podcast, one of the best senior amateurs in the country, who has won just about everything in the state of Iowa. If you don't believe me, ask Mike McCoy. He has competed on the national and the international level, and at the age of 58, is now a recipient of one of the U.S. Amateur exemptions. He will be at Bandon Dunes next month. So, Gene, congrats and good luck at the U.S. Amateur. I wanted to thank everyone that entered the FootJoy Pro SL shoe giveaway. Brad Elliott was the winner, no relation. So those shoes should be arriving to your door pretty soon, Brad. Thanks to FootJoy for supporting the Back of the Range. They're massive. You know FootJoy, you know Titleist. They did not have to do that, but they believe in the podcast, and I think you're going to see some more giveaways coming up very soon. I also really appreciate the great feedback that I got from everyone about the rules of the giveaway. We didn't do this on Instagram where you tag 3 friends and jump through some hoops. I wanted to give away the big ticket items for my core listeners. So keep on listening, and that's where you're going to find out about all of these giveaways in the future. My guest on this episode is Michael Beard, head coach of the Pepperdine men's golf team. You remember way back in March? I know, right? It's March. Well, along with everything else related to athletics, the college golf season was canceled. Now, there were a lot of teams looking good for a national title. Oklahoma, Baylor, Texas, Wake Forest, Florida. The traditional powerhouse programs were all there. But you know who is at the top? Pepperdine. This school in Malibu, California, with a view of the Pacific Ocean from their practice facility and a student population of a whopping 7,600. They were led by their senior leader, Sahith Thegala, and freshman sensation William Mao. Both were previous guests on the podcast, so if you haven't checked out those episodes, make sure you do so. Sahith has since turned pro, but Mao will be back next year, as well as their other seniors that came back, Fiegler and McCarthy. But the guy running the show is Michael Beard. former player at Pepperdine that came back to his alma mater, and this season was awarded the National Coach of the Year award. We spoke about Pepperdine quite a bit, hit on several topics involving the team and campus life, but if the name Beard rings a bell, yes, his father, Frank Beard, played on tour, won 11 times, and played on the Champions Tour during that amazing era in the 90s when Jack and Trevino and Palmer were still the Kings. So I had to ask him about that. I really enjoyed speaking with Coach Beard, and while this season was cut short, you can be certain that Pepperdine is going to be making some waves next season. Damn it, I knew I was going to do that. Let's go ahead, get this episode underway. Coach Beard, thank you so much for joining me here at the back of the range. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Ben. This is going to be fun.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad we're able to do it. And just as a preface, I'm kind of letting listeners know, as it's been like for the last 2 or 3 months, when we record, because when this episode gets released, who knows what the world's going to look like. But today's June 12th, and you're over on the West Coast in Malibu, California. It's 8 a.m. Let's make as many listeners as possible jealous of what you're looking at right now. What's your view in Malibu right now at 8 a.m. on a Friday morning?
Well, I'm actually not in Malibu. I'm in Westlake, which is just through the canyon, but it's not all that bad either. It's about 68 degrees and blue skies, so it's going to be a good one.
Everyone pretty much is aware of what happened on the landscape of college sports. The spring and winter seasons, they're actually canceled back in March, so no run at conference championships, regional championships, no run at a national. Goes without saying, there's a lot more. There are many people out there that are really hurting, compared to what it does to a collegiate golf season. But you're out in the West Coast Conference. You're not a traditional powerhouse golf conference like the Big 12 or the SEC. You climbed to number 1 in the nation. You're the favorite, or you're in that small little handful of teams that are going to be a favorite for a national championship. You don't get to be in that spot as often as maybe a Texas or a Stanford. Briefly, how do you handle that news where this run towards a title is not going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There are bigger things in college golf, obviously, going on right now. But at the time, college golf at that moment, that day, was all we really knew. All we really we were so deep in it that's what we were at that time. And so, to be honest with you, at that moment, it was the beginning of practice. It was raining outside, and guys are kind of looking at me as far as practice, what we're going to do, because it was starting to come down pretty good. And we're all walking down to the putting green, and one of the guys saw something on his phone. We go inside, we're looking at this, and this is actually happening, where they're going to cancel the season. And to be honest, it was just this feeling, and it wasn't just me. We just felt devastated,
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a pretty deep and harsh word for what's going on right now, but at the moment, that was what we have built this thing this year together, and we really felt like that we had a great shot at national championship, and it just felt devastated. There was about a 10-minute time where no one knew what to say. We just kind of looked at each other, and I'm telling the guys I'm sorry, and it took a little while until we started registered, and I said, I can't just sit here and tell them how bummed this is, like how tough this is. I just tried to maybe turn it around and a little bit and say, we're going to be better. We ended at number 1, and you guys need to be proud of yourselves. So anyway, it was a really tough day, and it didn't really set in even that much until even later on as well. But it was a neat time looking back on it, because we shared it together. It wasn't like everyone was in their separate places and we just got the news and we're getting texts and everything. It was like the team was together. So in a way, it was a neat time where we could all look back and kind of have that remember when they canceled the season day kind of thing. So
yeah,
really tough.
Yeah. Well, we're going to kind of get back into maybe some of the things that have changed since the season was canceled, because obviously you have seniors that think they're done, and then there's kind of a lifeline that's thrown out by the NCAA, and I want to actually ask you some questions on how you handle that. But before we do that, you actually played a little golf in your days. Weren't born a coach. For some people that are thinking, boy, that Beard name sounds a little familiar. Yes, you're son of former PGA Tour player Frank Beard, who got to ask you some questions about that. But a lot of the guests I speak with, I said, well, how do you get into the game of golf? And whether it's parents that they follow into the game or parents that never play that just kind of said, hey, there's a junior golf program, go ahead and try it, see if that sport works for you. I'm guessing your start in the game is pretty much just tagging along with dad on the PGA Tour. I mean, is it fair to say that you spent a fair amount of time of your childhood on the PGA Tour?
Yeah. So my close family and friends know this, but a lot of people don't know my mom actually played the PGA or the LPGA Tour for 8 years as well.
Yeah.
So I had my mom and my dad. We were golfing family. Obviously, our friends were players. So when I was born, my dad was transitioning from the big tour. He had about a 8-year window of getting ready for the senior tour or the Champions Tour now. So, and in that time, he was actually a director of golf at a club down in Palm Springs that I would tag along with him there, go to work with him, and kind of practice and play junior golf, all that kind of stuff. Mom, obviously supported me as well. But then when I got to about 8.5 or 9, he played on the Champions Tour, and that was the coolest thing for me looking back. From 8.5 till about 14, we would go in the summers. We travel with them. I'm going. Security was much less than it is now. So I mean, I'm literally walking with him to the locker room. Trevino's in there reading the paper. You got Gary Player walking in there and Nicholas, and it's just like, I mean, that's right. Those are his. That's his era,
right?
And Palmer was still playing obviously then, and I literally would just tag along with him and go to the range. When it was time to play, the tournament game, I couldn't get in the ropes, but every other time before the tournament started, I'm with him. And I got to the point where the caddies, I had these glasses when I was his age, and it looked like my dad. All the caddies would call me, there's little Frankie.
Oh my gosh.
So no, I had a blast. I learned so much without even knowing it.
Right.
I just kind of by watching. I always tell our guys now, like, the best thing you can do is play with guys that are better than you, or any tour player. Just go practice with them, go play with them, because I think once you see how it's done, once you see it, there's something about, I don't know, guys are just competitive and find ways to match or repeat what they see. So for me, it was just even little things on how they carry themselves, how they talk, how they, I mean, as a young kid growing up, like where you put your scorecard and your glove, where you stand on the green, stuff like that, like you just kind of have to figure out on your own. And I got to see it, right in front of me. So it was really neat. Not to mention my dad, like during the time he actually, I remember him finishing second at the U.S. At the Senior Open one year. He won only once, but he had like 6 seconds in like an 18-month span. And I don't know, just going to player dining and talking to all that kind of stuff that you think was so neat for me.
I'm thinking to myself, man, when I was your age, or when I was that age, I think I went to like a summer camp where I played basketball and like, tag and all that sort of stuff, kickball. That sounds like a much better summer camp than anyone could possibly imagine. Now, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but typically, a kid in that spot, his dad may not be his favorite player. So was your dad your favorite player? I mean, obviously you're rooting for him because he's your dad, but who was a guy that you maybe spent a little too much time hanging around, where someone I said, all right, now get away from me, kid. What are you doing? I'm working here.
He had his friends that he played a lot with.
Right.
And they really liked me. So that made me feel like, or they kind of accepted me because I was his son. So they accepted me. But when I got to, the more time I was around the summers and hanging with them, like Trevino, Trevino just like I just had that, like, wow,
Yeah.
kind of, he had a different aura about him, and I could tell when at a young age, and I just loved playing with him. When my dad would play with him, and just hearing him talk, watching him, just the way he was confident, and I don't know, there was something that just drew me towards him. In fact, I remember I caddied for my dad in the senior event in 2010, and so he was, I think, maybe 70, and my dad, it was a two-man, it was one of those Legends things. They were
Liberty
paired.
Mutual Legends of
Yes.
Golf. Yep.
Yes, and somehow him and his partner played well the first day, and the second day, which was the final day, were paired with Trevino and Mike Hill. And of course, I'm like, this is awesome,
Oh my
because they can
God.
still play a little good. I mean, the tees are up, but I mean, you could still see they're hitting shots and stuff. Anyway, I remember my dad telling me, he's like I'm really nervous, and he's 70 years old. He's won whatever,
Right.
played 2 Ryder Cups, won 12 times, and what I mean, the guy, and I mean, he's done this before, right? And he's like, I'm really nervous. He said, I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want to, he starts going this whole list, right?
Oh my God.
And I'm just like fired up. I've just started coaching, and I'm fired up. Like, this is great. Get to see Trevino and my dad kind of going at it. And so, long story short, he tees off, ends up shooting, he ends up shooting 29 on the first 9.
Is this wait? Was this your dad or Trevino?
No, my dad.
Oh.
And so we get in, and he's nervous on every shot, right? I mean, he's just like, and then he ends up shooting either 31 or 32. He shot 61, so I guess it would have been 32. Shot 61, and Trevino comes up and says, Frankie, that's one of the best rounds I've ever seen, and of course he's seen a lot of better, but still, it was cool to be a part of. They ended up winning, and are going to do a playoff with some other team. But anyway, it was so neat to see them kind of go at it, kind of old,
just old school, just reborn again.
Old school, yeah. So anyway, I really enjoyed. I always, even now when I see Trevino, he's just one of my favorite maybe personalities, and always admire how he hits the ball, and just what he can do with the golf ball. So, and I remember at a young age, I felt the same way.
That is one thing that I'm a little concerned about with the game. I don't know if the Champions Tour, because I guess you're thinking about early '90s is kind of what you're referring to.
Yeah, exactly.
And when Trevino's rocking that Cadillac, hat and
yep.
And yeah, I remember that, and that was such a cool era on the Champions Tour. And I've been to a handful of Champions Tour events, and I don't see it as much. I don't know if it's going to have it. I don't know if it's going to have the juice that it did when you had the personalities, because as you know, maybe these personalities are no longer in the game, and that's a whole other discussion. But man,
I feel you.
Yeah, that sounds like such a cool experience, and I'm now, of course, you took a lot of credit for carrying your dad to that 61. I mean, it wasn't all him. I mean, come
on. Yeah, right. I'm sure. No, it was. I was just watching.
Oh, yeah.
You get these, one of the things I tell our guys, you get this idea in your head that these guys are out there, and maybe it's a little bit of the old school way of playing. I don't know. But my dad was literally, I said, Dad, when was the last time on the putting green before he tees off, when he's telling me how scared he is and all this? And I said, when was the last time you enjoyed playing competitive, round like this? I said, why don't you think back to that and kind of get in that mental state, and
yeah.
And he says, it's maybe in college when I got to play 36 a day with my buddies.
Wow.
I'm like, what? Yeah. It's like he played in fear his whole career, but played pretty well. I mean, now I don't know. Maybe if he didn't have fear, he would have been better or worse. I don't know. But I think part of it is the fear made him the player he was. And I try to tell our guys that it's okay. It's not going to be strolling down the fairways like you're walking in the park and you're just, feeling great and, everything's just great and you shoot 65 every day. It's not how it is. You got these internal battles that you're going to have to face and still be able to perform, or still have to perform at a high level. And I think that's the playing golf that a lot of the, hopefully our guys at Pepperdine kind of learn as they're in school. But anyway, I've been so fortunate to be able to, and I still pick my dad's brain. I mean, I'll call him. We talk at least once every other day. I
Wow.
pretty much hear the same stories, but I still
That's okay.
ask different questions. Try to get different answers, but they're still the same answers. But I get to pick his brain, and he's a thinker. So
Yeah.
it's not like he put some time into what he believes and what he's saying. So I get a lot out from talking to him too. So it's been great.
That's awesome. Well, it's interesting. You're the head coach obviously right now at Pepperdine, but you played there. You had this great all West Coast Conference career there from '99 to 2002, and All American honorable mention. I mean, you had this great career, but just by you talking and being behind the scenes of what it takes to be a professional golfer, I'm guessing that kind of shapes how you look at playing collegiately, or were you just so excited to play college golf that you hadn't thought about what it would take to be a professional yet?
No, I mean, it was from when I was 6. I wanted to play the PGA Tour. I
Okay.
mean, this was a huge determining factor on where I was going to go to school. Now, my dad obviously knew the Geibergers down on the regular tour before I was born, but on the
Sure.
senior tour, knew them fairly well too. And I remember when I would caddy for my dad, John Geiberger would be out there caddying, and got to know them. Me personally, got to know them a little bit when I was quite a bit younger, but I got to know them, at least familiar with them during the senior tour. And then when John Geiberger got the job at Pepperdine, it made it even more of a just kind of a connection that I had to the school now, close to home. And I trusted. I knew where I was going. I knew who was going to be kind of looking after me. So I was always felt comfortable with that decision. But yeah, I mean, Pepperdine. I mean, the location obviously
Oh
at the
yeah.
time. I had I was a good junior golfer, not like the best by any means. I was good enough to get recruited by some top upper echelon schools with Texas and USC and UNLV and ASU, and I just felt like Pepperdine was going to make me a better. I wasn't worried about the golf for some reason. I just wasn't worried about
Okay.
like I've got to have this facility or this. I just felt like that I was going to be the one that was going to determine whether I was going to be ready to go to that next level. And I felt like Pepperdine was going to get me in a place where I'd kind of grow more as a person than some of the other schools. And I don't know, there was just something about it that felt like home to me, felt right. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's great that you're saying that was your experience going into Pepperdine, because in previous conversations I've had with collegiate coaches and college players, I always ask that question, like, how important is it to find the right fit? Not only a place where you're gonna, be able to, obviously, the academics is a piece of it, and then also, finding a place where you can play. So it sounds like that's a place that fit you perfectly, and I'm guessing you relate that information to when you're recruiting or incoming players, because as you well know, you have to be at a place where you're comfortable and you can play.
for sure. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I see it all the time. Kids, maybe me playing at Pepperdine, I wouldn't have had as good of a career if I played at a bigger school. I don't know. I mean, at the time, it felt like it fit me, and I was going to be able to achieve my goals there and all that. And I see that when recruiting kids. Sometimes you get kids that they're just maybe wired a little different, or they just want the bit. I shouldn't say wired different, just wired a way where they want the bigger school football
Right.
and
They want the
it's just
traditional college experience. And
yeah.
you're right, of course.
Yeah, and Pepperdine's not that way. If you're serious about golf and maybe you're looking to not have some of those distractions, it's a great place if you're looking to play the tour and kind of learn and grow as a person too. So, but I definitely have seen players, and I have a few on our team, and we talk about it all the time, that if they were in another school, I'm not sure they would have had the success they've had, just because they found the right, fit for them in the right environment where they could kind of be them
Sure.
and not just kind of be another body.
Well, I also like the fact that your driving range faces the Pacific Ocean. Let's not fail to mention that when I've spoken to a couple of your current players or a couple of your players, Thigala and William Mao. I mean, that was clearly something that's a nice perk when your range isn't facing like a net and it's facing the Pacific Ocean. So, yeah, that's a nice selling point. So, I mean, so you get into coaching after you play professionally for a handful of years. You played a couple PGA Tour events. You're on Nationwide, Canadian Tour. I love trying to figure out when a college coach gets the bug. So was it something that you were destined to do, or is it something that was Coach Geiberger say, hey, why don't you come back and try this out? I need some help. How did your entry into collegiate coaching start?
When I turned pro, I my whole life, this is all in my
That's all you
mind.
wanted
This
to
is
do.
all I wanted to do, and I went to extreme lengths to get everything out of my game and turned over every rock to see, what I can do to get better. And it got to the point where, when I got out of school, I had school that kind of occupied my day for half the day. And
Right.
then when I turned pro, it's like, oh my gosh, I've got like 8 to 10 hours. I can just grind on this. I can do this. This is awesome. Like this was like heaven to me, right? To go out there and to be able to really have the full day to get better. And, I, I kind of was in this this circle where I just would keep trying and then not get where I want to go, then keep trying, and it just got to where it was it meant too much to me almost, I think. And
Right.
it got
Right.
to where like I'm playing tournaments and I don't know at the time, but looking back on it, I felt like I was just giving each shot too much power, and rather than just going and playing and just accepting what's going to happen. So anyway, um, and in 2010 is where I realized that, wait a minute here, my way is not working, so it took me about 8 years to figure that out.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I had some success on the way, but not anything to where I felt like that, I'm going to keep, I felt like that we're really heading in the right direction. So anyway, I 2010, I was like, you know what? My wife actually convinced me of like, maybe you just need a different perspective on it. My dad actually helped me with it too. But, so and randomly enough, the assistant at the time, Brendan Von Doren, who works the PGA Tour now, was moving on. And I had kept in touch with the program, a little bit here and there. And I would see John down in the desert sometimes, and I'd come up and visit every once in a while. So I kind of knew the program, what was going on. And a while back, he had mentioned, hey, Brendan's going to be done at the end of this year. Not sure what you're doing. And then, at first I'm like, no way,
Yeah, I'm not
there's no
hanging it up.
way. I'm not
Yeah.
coaching. What am I coaching? No, this isn't for me. Um, and it just hit me that summer. We had a 6-month-old at the time, and I'm like, I'm kind of teaching / playing, and we're barely making any money. What are we doing?
Right.
And so uh, I said, well, I'll go over there and talk to coach and just see what he has to say. So I go over there and talk to him, and I said, you know what? Give me a couple weeks. This sounds good. Let me give me a couple weeks. I kind of did it for my wife, and then I came back and we were going somewhere, and we just decided, you know what? Let's do it. Let's pack up and let's do it. And, let's take a kind of a leap of faith here and do it. I need a different perspective on it. But the idea was not to get into coaching to coach. The idea was to more just give me a different perspective on my own game. John convinced me that I could still play a little bit here and there and be the assistant coach. So I said, this is a good deal for me. I get to be around guys, help guys. We got a good team coming up this year. I knew some of the players that were coming back, And I'm like, this will be a great little break, So I was going to make some money and still play, and it all made kind of sense. And then I got in 3 months into it, and I had Andrew Putnam on the team, Josh Anderson, a guy named Johnny MacArthur, a couple other guys that I got to be pretty close with, and I just said, "Whoa, this is what I need to be doing."
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden, it took the last 8 years of me trying to put, well, actually more than that, because it was in college and junior golf too, but putting so much energy and effort into making myself better. This was the first time in my life really where I could take it off of myself and try to help these 9 guys. And it was kind of like a weight lifted off my shoulders, actually. And I just loved it. I just loved it. It was we had a great time. We made the national championship that year, and I had a great connection with the players, and learned so much on the way. The first tournament, I walked with Josh Anderson for 36 holes, and he won the tournament by like 3 shots.
Okay.
And then in the second tournament, I walked with Andrew Putnam, and he won his tournament. So I was like, "Whoa, this is easy!"
Magic touch. You know what you're doing.
Two for two. I mean, gosh, I should be look into this a little bit further. But anyway, yeah, it was a great kind of eye-opening experience for me, and I haven't really looked back since then.
It's crazy. I mean, you're basically sold on this idea of like just come and practice for a little bit and hang out with the guys and share some tips and tricks. And then now years later, you're winner of, Dave Williams National Coach of the Year. So I'm guessing you didn't see that being added to your resume when you first got into it.
No, in fact, I had, like I said, that when that 3-month kind of window hit, and I realized, okay, this is what I need to be doing. It then turned into the next 6 months or so turned into, okay, if this is what I want to be doing, and if I'm gonna, be great at this, I've got to look at, what would be the best avenue to be a head coach. If I'm going to be a head coach, what would be the best avenue to be a head coach?
Sure.
Do I stay at Pepperdine for 3 years, and then will that give me a chance to be a coach, or do I go to another place and kind of learn something there, and then will that better equip me? So I had a lot of, I didn't know the coaching world. I didn't know the
Sure.
business, so I was kind of just learning everything on the fly, and I actually knew Tim Mickelson a little bit when we were in college, and I had friends that knew him really well. So I kind of knew him through friends. But he was the head coach at San Diego at the time, and he was very helpful with just bouncing ideas and asking questions. I could always go to him. In the springtime, I remember going to him, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think? If I want to do this, where should I go?" He had already been coaching for, I don't know, eight years or so, and they had a great team. They made it to maybe the final 8 or close to the final 8. I can't remember, but anyway, they were the best team in the conference, and he had really, really had a nice program over there at San Diego. And I always remember picking his brain, saying, he's kind of a business guy too. He kind of knows how it. His mind works that way. So I trusted him and felt comfortable talking with him. But at the end of that year, he actually got the job at Arizona State as the head coach. So after my first year as an assistant, he got hired as a head coach at Arizona State. And before he had even gotten that job, he had already kind of shared, "Hey, maybe you should be looking at other places. At some point, you're going to have more value to yourself if you have more experiences than just Pepperdine, because you played there and now you coach there."
Makes sense.
Yeah. So sure enough, he had me on an interview. When he got the job, he had me on an interview in like July as one of the 3 candidates to be his assistant. And I don't know if he just didn't like the other 2 or that he liked me, but he ended up hiring me that year. And gosh, I learned so much that first year. I was there for a year and a half, and just our first recruiting class was John Rahm and Max Rotliff and Alberto Sanchez.
Not bad.
Yeah, but I learned so much from Tim. I mean, he just he just worked hard every day, and I really, really learned what it was like to work hard as a coach, because I didn't know this. It was all still new to me. I could be with the guys and help them with their golf, but there's so many other things than just helping them with their golf, and I learned that from Tim.
You ultimately go back to Pepperdine for your head coaching gig. So you spent a year and a half as an assistant at a, I guess we could say a traditional golf powerhouse in the Pac-12, as opposed to maybe Pepperdine isn't the traditional one from the West Coast Conference. You mentioned, some kids fit in; they want that bigger college experience. Some don't. So I as someone that went to Pepperdine, then ultimately became the head coach there. Maybe what did you see at a bigger program? I don't want to say bigger as far as better necessarily, but just as far as the scale and the scope. Like, what were some of the things that you saw that you realized, well, maybe this isn't for me as a long-term option as far as being a head coach at a big university?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. Good way to put it. So a couple things I noticed. And you're right. It was an adjustment for me as an employee or as a coach too. When I look at it from a player's perspective, it's different than how I look at it from a coaching perspective. If I was a college kid, the school is obviously quite a bit different. But when you look at the golf portion of it, when you look at it's really not that much different,
Right.
And I look at it as an employee, and as a coach there, and at Pepperdine, it's way different. I mean, it's much bigger in not just size, but there's just more. There's a whole lot more going on there.
Sure.
There's you have the Phoenix community, that is right there with Malibu. Malibu doesn't have a huge golfing community. I mean, it's
Right.
you have the Phoenix community that you're juggling there. There's tons of courses there that all that kind of stuff. It's just different, and the expectation at ASU is very high. The one thing that I learned from Tim, it was actually great. We weren't very good that first year. I think we were ranked like 80th. So
Okay.
for ASU, it was wasn't very good, and I learned how to basically kind of rebuild with Tim, and I think that the next year, I think they got to match play or close to match play. I can't remember, but it was, I think, match play, and so it was like a big turnaround, and so I learned that from Tim, no question, my first year at ASU. I remember going to ASU, and I remember because I got over there early. My wife was still at Pepperdine. We were getting all our stuff together and moving our stuff over. And I remember calling her and saying, "Oh boy, I think I made the wrong decision. I don't know if this is the right place for me." And it was just so different. And sure enough, after a week there, I was like, "No, this is great. This is awesome. This is exactly what we need." But it was just so big. You're right. It was so big. I think football makes a big difference. I'm not, with Pepperdine not having a football team, that we don't have, that doesn't run our department. This isn't all about
Right.
football. So that was I'd never experienced that, and that was eye opening for sure. But yeah, it was so different. It seemed like might have been a little bit of extremes, smaller school, to a big Pac-12, Power 5 school or whatever. I mean, there are differences, but when you get down to the golf part, it really isn't that much different. But when you're
Right.
down the school and the experience, it is different.
Yeah, I'm guessing if you could just keep that nice and insulated, it'd be fine. But when you add everything and there's the scale and the scope of a massive university and a massive, organism,
Massive. Yeah.
yeah,
55. They're at the biggest public school in the country. I don't know if it still is, but when I was there, it was. I mean, there's 55,000. We have like 4,000 at Pepperdine, and
yeah,
that's a big difference.
yeah. Well, I mean, all right. So let's talk a little bit about your team at Pepperdine. I mean, I had Sahith Thigala on the podcast. I believe it's episode 101, and I'm sure every time you're sitting down and talking to someone like me, you're getting his name is coming up. I mean, All American, twice, and Haskins Award this year, Hogan Award. I know he has a chance for kind of the Triple Crown when they announced the Nicholas Award winner at the Memorial this year. So let me ask you, for the casual golf fan that maybe is just now getting on the Hovland, Wolf, Morikawa, Neiman train, where they're transitioning in newer faces and maybe transitioning out the Furyks and the Strickers and maybe the Mickelsons. They're looking for new young stars to follow. He's turned pro. What is going to draw golf fans to Sahith Theegala?
Well,
and you could be as partial as you want to.
Yeah,
you just coached him
yeah.
for 4 years, so you can sell him. Feel free to do it.
I love having the opportunity to talk about him and to share just how special he is. People will eventually see it and find out here. I hope here in the next, I don't know, I want to say 2 to 5 years, we'll see how special he is. But this kid has it. I mean, he is, just a class person off the golf course as much as he is on. He is unique in so many different ways. I mean, I love talking about him and sharing stories about him. I mean, I've never seen anyone process the game the way he does. The whole idea of score to him is unlike anything that most, at least college golfers, and I think most average golfers, but most college golfers, junior golfers, the way the way they look at it is nothing the way Sahith looks at it. He has a unique way of separating the two of score, what you shoot, even on a hole, let alone what you shoot in the round. He has a unique way of separating that and who he is as a person. They never go together, to him. I mean, they almost don't even they're not even in the same category in his mind. I mean, he could make an 8 on a hole and he's going to feel the same way about himself going to the next tee that he would if he made a 3. You know what I mean? It's just how he is. It doesn't affect. And then the same thing as if he's got a 20 footer to win, or a 20 footer for par, to him, it's a 20 footer. It doesn't mean anything extra to him, so anything more important. So that I've seen over the years is so refreshing and so unique in how the normal golf, how we all are, I mean,
Sure.
I got this putt to win, or, I'm going to be, I'm going to have this putt to go to a tournament or whatever, whatever it is, he doesn't, he just separates them. And I think that's a huge quality to have. The kid, as far as golf goes, the kid is such a great imagination. He loves to curve the ball. When it comes to his golf swing, he knows kind of certain things in his swing, like rhythm wise, if it's off or not, but he's not going to sit there and grind on positions,
Sure.
in his swing. I mean, that's just not who he is. He would much rather, if he's hitting it bad, sometimes he'll even go to say, hey, let's just go play. Let's just go play. It'll kind of work itself out, rather than most of us are sitting there and just go, trying to find the right exact weight transfer to firing your hits and all that kind of junk. But he loves, he'll just go play. I mean, I'm not to say he won't put 2 or 3 hour range session in. It's just not, there's just a time for that. It's just not all the time will he do that. He is just, I don't know. I mean, everyone will see it. But he just has he loves the game. He loves to play the game. And I think that what I see in Phil, I don't know Phil. I think, I mean, I know him through Tim. I've met him once or twice, but I don't really know Phil. But from what Tim says, it sounds similar in that they just love, I think Phil's been successful for so long. Obviously he's one of the best players ever, but
Sure.
he just loves golf. I
Right.
mean, if he did it for the money, I mean, he probably wouldn't. I don't know. This is just me, an outsider here, but probably wouldn't be where he is right now. He loves to play, and I think that's what I've kind of seen with Scythe is he'll play. I mean, his first pro event was an Outlaw Tour event. I mean, some of these top guys are waiting to get their first tour start, and that's their first pro event. I mean, he doesn't care. He just wants to go play. He went and played in a 40-man field in Arizona in 110-degree weather, and I mean, he grew up at a course at the greens, and I mean the condition was just cow
Nothing.
pasture.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he used to tell me, I have a great story. He used to tell me, well, when I recruited him originally, I had him on campus, and we showed him our kind of range on campus, and usually I get a sense of if a kid likes it or not, after we get through that part, and I said to him, I said, so what do you think? And he said, Coach, this is great. And he said, I said, well, where do you practice at home? Like what, this is like when I first could talk to him, he said, well, we can't really, we don't have a membership at a club or anything. So I play, I play at this public course near my house, but I get all my practice done when I go to tournaments, and because all their facilities are way better than what I'm used to, so I just get all my practice done there at tournaments.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, here's a guy. If you look at his like junior career, like the kid's played in like 5,000 tournaments. He doesn't go practice on the range. He goes and plays in tournaments. And he kind of figures it out there. And if you can imagine doing that since you were 6 years old, I mean, you imagine what kind of like the wiring you have,
Of
I mean, this guy
course.
just loves to play, he loves to play. And I mean, I could sit here and tell you story after story about him. I mean, he's just so special. I think all the guys in the team see it and know it, and I know they do, and we're rooting for him, and can't wait to see him break through when he turns pro here. I as far as his game goes, I think that he may his driving has gotten so much better, and his iron game has gotten so much better. He used to be a wild driver, and he used to hit his distances with irons all over the place. I mean, he could hit a 7-iron 160 yards, and he could hit it 195 easily. So it was always hard clubbing him because I didn't know what was going to come out of there, if it was going to come a hard draw or a soft cut. But he's really gotten. I think his wrist surgery has helped him with that, actually, where he can't kind of manufacture the face as much. So he still has it in there, but it's definitely more controlled distance wise, and he's learned to use his body a little bit better. I think with his wrist not having as much flexibility, maybe now that he's using his body a little bit better. I don't know. This is just what I see, but it definitely more of a controlled game, but isn't afraid to turn the ball still. I mean, this guy, he can hit 40, 50 yard slices on call in a tournament. And like, that's just like a normal guy hitting a 3-yard draw. I mean, he just loves it. He loves it.
Sounds like a throwback. Actually, this doesn't sound yeah.
He kind of does. He has a little bit of Bubba in him with that. I mean, I'm telling you, if he gets nervous on a tee shot or anything, he'll just aim it out of bounds and hit this 30-yard cut literally into the fair. He's not afraid to aim so far left out of bounds and play it right over that, over OB and put it in the fairway. So,
wow.
Anyway, yeah.
All right. So you said you had plenty of stories about Scythe, but let me ask you this one. One of the most notable collegiate victories, I think, in a long time is the Southwestern Invitational, where he wins the individual. You guys win the team title as well. But probably a lot of people surprised to see a college golfer wearing a Kobe Bryant jersey in competition. Obviously, he was a big Kobe fan, and he brings the jersey out, walking up 18. He still had to two-putt that final green. Did you know he was going to do that, or did that come as a surprise to you as much as everyone else?
I didn't know he was going to do that, but he in the moment I didn't. He came up to me, or I met him in the fairway, I think. I can't remember if I was walking down. I might have caught him on 17, and I was walking with him 17 and 18, and and because I wanted him to know exactly where the other guys were, because he was playing with Chen On Yu and USC kid who was in second. So I wanted to know where he was, as far as, because sometimes the live scoring, they don't know all the time, and I'm looking at my phone and I can tell I'm talking to the coach. So I think I was there. I came up to him on either 17, and I was walking with him to 18, and it was funny, like 2 years. So he actually won this tournament as a sophomore, and he was in the fairway. Not to back up on you here, but it was kind of a fun story. He was in the fairway. He shot like 66, 67 the first 2 rounds, and he's in the fairway on 18 the final round. He's not having his game. I mean, he's hitting it everywhere. He's maybe a couple over, maybe 1 or 2 over, and because he's getting up and down from everywhere, and he gets over in the right rough. Somehow he hits his drive. It was almost out of bounds. He's in the right rough. And he's like, Coach, I don't know where I'm at right now. Just give me a club and tell me where to hit it.
Nice.
And so I could tell he was the first time I really saw him kind of nervous, because he just wasn't in control of his game. And so anyway, we just got in there, hit a 9-iron, just put it left side of the green. Let's get out of here. And so here he comes down 18 again, and he has a 1-shot lead.
Yeah.
And so he hits it down the fairway, stripes it. And we get to the second, he hits his second shot on the green now, and he says, "Hey, Coach, I got Kobe's jersey in my bag. How do you think that would look if I brought it out and wore it walking up to the green? Like, you think that's too much?" And I'm like, "Son, no, dude, this is you." He's like, "You got to go with your heart. I'm not going to sit here and tell you." He's like, and I just kind of stopped talking. He said, okay. And then he put it on and did it. And in that he said, "Hey, I mean, even if I was 1 down, I would do this, I just
awesome.
feel like I need to do it. It's not about me winning. I just need to do it." And I said, do it then. And it was way better received than he was thinking it might look. I mean, I think everyone was clapping and yelling Kobe when he got done. They loved it. It wasn't that rub it in your face kind of thing at all.
Right.
And I think partly it's because they know what kind of kid he is, and he wouldn't be that way. But
sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was a special moment for sure. Tough for all of us, being literally, it was like 3 miles from where we were on Sunday. I mean, it wasn't even that far away when it happened, and it was just kind of it just hit us hard. And for him to do that, and I mean, it was really, really special moment.
Yeah, he shoots 70, 68, and that was a 66 that he shot in that final round. So that was incredible. You mentioned the other guys on the team. You have this incoming freshman, William Mao, who I've been able to speak with as well. And this is not necessarily a question comparing, Sahith and William, but they're right there neck and neck on, stroke average. You got this one guy who is the clear leader of your team. Then you have another one who's just an incoming freshman, AJGA All-American. And I'm guessing, you want to encourage these freshmen to play their best, and you want them to compete on the team and find a spot. You don't want to put him in a box, but, he's also a freshman, has to understand that there are seniors that have been on the team, for a longer period of time. How do you approach that balance on a team? Are you kind of hands off and let things just organically develop, or do you kind of get right into it yourself to help maybe shape the culture of that team, balancing, a very young player and then a established leader?
Other than when Saad was a freshman, I had a similar thing where we had our senior was our best player, and then the freshman coming in was going to be our second best player,
Right.
if not our best player. So, but Saad's the senior that time when Saad was a freshman was a very strong, kind of dominant personality, and Saad was not.
Was that Fred Weddle?
Yes, Fred Weddle. Yes, he was a dominant personality, and Sahith was not. So it was a little bit easier to kind of than how it was this year. So William is a very strong personality, and Sahith's more of, I'll just let the clubs do the talking kind of mentality, and so this one was a little bit different. In a good way, though. It brought out the best in Scythe for sure. I mean, it was, he was challenged. He did not want to give up his, like, hey, I'm a senior kind of thing, get number one spot, but he enjoyed it. It wasn't like he was afraid of it. He enjoyed it.
Right.
And with Mao, he was great in understanding, hey, this isn't my time to come in and be the guy right now, but I'm gonna try to be the guy. But he knew that it was still Saha's team.
Sure.
And whether it was in meetings or his voice wasn't as, now next year I think it would be a little different, but he just kind of took a back seat with that, which was hard for him because he's very he's just a strong personality. And but it was great because it pulled a lot of that stuff. It helped Scythe become a little bit more that way. And they both hated losing to each other, both of them. I mean, they would go at it. I mean, they'd go play 9 holes and they come back, let's go putt, let's go chip, let's go putt again. They'd stay till dark until someone won, and so I don't think it ever really turned into like who's number one, who's number two. I think it got to the point where, I just kept telling him, I said, we got the best 1-2 players in the country, and it became more of, we're doing this together rather than I'm competing against you. But I think he felt like they still didn't like to lose to each other. You know what I mean? But you're right. It is a different. Every personality is a little bit different. With that, I don't really have a kind of uniform way to approach it. But we do have a kind of a rule that as a freshman you have to earn your spot as far as your first tournament. You're not going to get picked. You're not going to get a coach's pick. I don't care who you are as a freshman, early on as your first tournament. So
right.
Going back to Scythe, he actually finished 6th in his first qualifier as a freshman. He finished 6th, and we were taking 5, and that 5th guy was the senior who had just won our conference championship the year before. And I remember talking to my assistant at the time. I said, "Are we really leaving this kid behind to his first tournament? What are we doing?" And I was just like, "Oh, we got to do it. We got to do it." So he actually didn't qualify for his first tournament, and with Mao, his first qualifier this year, he as for the first tournament, he I think he might have won by about 6.
Okay, that means he's going. Yeah,
he's going.
Yeah. So, you have a very deep team. I know we're talking a lot about Mao, we're talking about Sahith, but you have Fiegler, McCarthy. They're coming back actually for another senior season. You got you have this really deep team where I don't think you've had a very consistent lineup this past year. You've had different lineups. Is that just kind of like the way you like it? You just set up a lot of qualifiers and be like, all right, let's see who's got it. Let's see who my 5 are this time. Or do you, how do you set up a qualifying format where you have such a strong lineup? I mean, how do you set that up?
Yeah, so this was unique this year. We usually do qualifiers every tournament, but this year was a strange. Well, it was a great problem to have,
right?
But it was really tough, and it's going to be the same way this next year. But what it did was we had a qualifier as if we could, we did it before every tournament. So everyone had a chance to play. We had a couple individual tournaments where if you didn't qualify, that you could play in some individual events. But we had 10 guys. We had 10 guys last year finish in the top 10 in a tournament. Some might have been an individual tournament, but they actually finished in the top 10 in their tournament that they played. Crazy. Which was to us, it felt like, hey, if someone's slacking or if someone's not, there's another guy behind them that can play just as good, if not better than them at that, in that moment or at that time. So we were okay with taking whoever obviously qualified. But if I were looking back on it, at some point, you're right. We had a different team in every tournament we played in. And at some point, you can only take 5, the national championship. So at some point we need to have some sort of continuity and the guys needed to know, who their team was and if they could count on them and stuff like that. So um, we were getting to the point where we would have to start at least the top three guys were going to start to, kind of solidify their spot and then kind of fight for the last two. But it really made qualifying a place where they were more nervous in qualifying than in tournaments.
I was just going to say, I'm thinking to myself, these qualifiers just had to have been absolutely vicious.
Oh, they were insane.
It's almost like it sounds like the tournament is just like, hey, let's go on a golf vacation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, in a way, it was just like, okay, now we just show up and play. It's like usually it's the other way. You practice, and now it's you get to a tournament like, okay, I really want to do well. And it wasn't that way with our guys, which it turned out to be really good for us. And there's a balance there of making sure you have the best team, but then there's things you learn during tournaments too. I mean, if you have a Josh McCarthy, who's a great player. He's played in 3 national championships, and he's not getting in the tournament to kind of see where, you learn a lot in tournaments, and he's not getting in the tournaments to learn those things. Are we really helping the kid? So it was a challenge. It's going to be a challenge this year, but since we've already done it once, I think we have a pretty good plan for this next year. And again, adding those extra tournaments really helps because, I mean, we had Dylan Menante, who's he was a freshman this last year, and he played in like a couple individual tournaments before his first team event. And his first team event, he finished 12th, which is in Cal's event. Second team event, he finished like 14th, and, like he shot 65 the last day, so he had those tournaments to, in a way, the junior or the individual tournaments in a way to kind of just get his feet wet and get his kind of confidence up. And now he knew when he went to team events, he was willing to play, but ready to play. But I really do feel like the qualifying component, making that competitive is a huge thing that we need to have going forward. And I learned so much from that this year, and it started prior to that. It started prior to that when I first started as a coach at Pepperdine. It was a joke. I had a guy. I mean, there were guys that just didn't take it seriously, and it was like we didn't know. It's just totally flipped, and it's neat to get out there, and they're like getting out to qualifying and practice early, trying to get ready. Who's going who? Where are we going? How many we taking? I mean, it's like
it's vicious.
Intense. Yeah.
Wow. I have to ask you. You've had this great season where you finished number one. Finish ranked number one. You win Coach of the Year. You had 3 wins in a couple seconds. I've spoken with several college golf coaches after their big wins, and for some reason the meal of choice is fast food. So we're going to have a little fun here. I've heard McDonald's, I've heard Chick-fil-A, and I'm a native Floridian. I've not made it out to California very much in my life. Walk me through what a hungry Pepperdine golf team, what kind of an onslaught did they do to an In-N-Out burger?
Well, Mao takes it deep. Mao might do Mao might be doing a 6x6. Yeah, Mao.
All right, what's a 6x6? I don't know all the lingo and codes, unfortunately.
Yeah, so a 6x6 is 6 patties and 6 cheeses. So, you're literally having 6 burgers on there, in one. And I mean, I think Saha's not afraid to take down 2 double doubles. Blaine, our associate head coach, he's definitely not afraid to take a couple double doubles down. No, we have a fun time, and you're right. We have celebrated it in our when we land in the air. When we land in LA, we would definitely stop at In-N-Out as a kind of a celebration. But one of the things I learned from my mom and dad, actually, when they were playing, was during the week, like they used to always tell me, he's like, hey, you play like you eat, or something like that, and make sure you're always having a good meal before your tournament. So I've kind of gone over for a tournament round, so I've kind of gone a little extreme with that with our guys, and I mean, some of the places we go, these guys have never even heard of. It's pretty fun, but it's fun to take them to nice places and to kind of spoil them a little bit. I think that sometimes it started like, oh, why are we doing this? But I think the guys are enjoying it now, and I got to be careful because expectations. It's hard to keep, upping what we've been
Yeah,
doing. But
you can't have just like lobster tail and
no,
fillets.
no,
You just
no.
there's a certain limit to the expense account at Pepperdine, I'm guessing. So what before I let you go, I want to ask you, Sahith is leaving, he's turning pro, but McCarthy and Fiegler are coming back. I'm sure that those conversations are tough. And as I alluded to earlier, you think your season's over, and then you get this lifeline from the NCAA where your seniors can come back for another season of eligibility. I mean, briefly, how do you have that? I mean, was it just a non-starter with Sahith? I mean, with him racking up awards, I mean, that's the time where he has to turn pro to take advantage of a lot of opportunities. But I mean, what are those conversations like with your other established seniors, Fiegler and McCarthy? How do you weigh and balance, what they do? Do they come back? Do they turn pro? Can you briefly explain just that process you had?
Sure. It made it a little bit easier for them to think about coming back because they were planning on doing the Canadian tour, Q School, and that had gotten canceled. And so I think if they had a place to play, it might have been a little bit different. But when I spoke to him, I remember talking to Josh and kind of laying out the options for him, and he cut me off within 10 seconds. Says, "Coach, if I can come back, I want to come back."
There you go.
you
There's
know,
one.
yeah, and so I mean, there was no, and both of them, we felt like they had the way it ended this year was just really tough. Neither of them had the greatest years, and I think both of them wanted another crack at it. So. Um, so we were willing to find a way to make it happen if they wanted to come back, but I wanted it to be their decision. I wasn't going to say, hey, you guys should really think about coming back. I mean,
Sure.
that wasn't going to work if it wasn't coming from them. So so Josh was just like, if we can find to make it work, let's do it. I want to do it. So then we had to go figure out the scholarship situation. But and then with Clay, I mean, no one really wants to do another year of school, right? I mean, it's like, I got another year of school. I thought I was going to be done, this kind of stuff. And both Josh and Clay were that way. Like, what does the school look like? Pepperdine's not, it's not that easy. And
Yeah.
so that was a big question. But we worked it out where they both had a class to take to graduate in May, actually. So basically, they're taking a minor in the fall, and they're gonna take that one class their spring season next year. So basically, they're gonna have one more semester of school, and then their last semester is gonna have one. They're gonna have one class. So it actually worked out great for them.
I wish I could swing a deal like that.
I
I mean,
know, I know. And then Clay was just, again, he was like, hey, if I could come back to be with the team and you guys for one more year. She's like, he had his mindset on turning pro, but there really isn't much out there for him to play
yeah.
at that where he was. So he's like, I'd love to come back if we can find a way to make it work. So both of them are super excited. We're excited to have him back. The team is excited to have him back. Um, it sounds like there's a lot of other teams that their seniors are coming back. So there's going to probably be some super stacked
It is going to be an incredible
program.
Yeah, it's going to be an incredible, and you have a lot of teams that are actually picking up these, like you're able to bring back these two seniors. There's a lot of teams that can't, or they're not. And I mean, Florida just picked up two players from Lynn University.
I saw that.
I mean, they just picked up two of Andy Walker's team or kids from Lynn. They
Yep.
got Bustos and I believe Hunter Ostrom for Notre Dame just went to Texas.
Yep.
So,
and then Oklahoma just added a top 15 player. So I mean, there's going to be some super teams, and then there's probably going to be, we're probably going to see a bigger kind of dispersion from the top to, let's say, 50th. I think there's going to be a little bigger gap.
Yep.
Because then there's seniors that maybe are moving on. They just either they can't do it, or they just want to move on, and they have their freshman coming in that was going to replace. I don't know. I've kind of looked at it, talked to other coaches, and I just think there's going to be a pretty big size gap between the top and like I said, like a 50th ranked team. But you still only need 5 players. I mean, you could have 10 great ones, but there are only 5 that are going to be playing.
Well, and
so,
and you know that when you get to that national championship and you get into match play, that's when all bets are off, and
that's right.
Who knows what's going to happen? Well, before I let you go, this is the 5th episode featuring a Pepperdine University golf, a representative of Pepperdine golf. Let's see, we've had Sahith, as I mentioned, William Mao, just had Andy Walker recently, part of that 97 national championship team. Jason Gore, Andy's teammate. You are the 5th. Now, I'm not looking for a set of steak knives here or a watch. I actually want to come see this campus in Malibu, and naturally you're going to need to be my host. So tell me, what does a golf weekend look like in Malibu, California? You're my tour guide. What do I need to see and do? I'm a Florida guy, so this, but Malibu. I mean, get out of here. I mean,
can I show you Pepperdine? I mean, is that
you're my host. Show me what do I need to see in Malibu? What does a good Malibu golf weekend look like?
Well, if we're going to do it right,
we only do things right around here. I mean, come on.
Okay. I got to show you campus. I got to show you around there and kind of what. Go all the way to the top and show you kind of the views, obviously, but just where you can see the whole campus. And we might have to go down to John's Garden there or somewhere down in Malibu for lunch. There are a lot of good people watching down there, and then we might head over. We'd have to go through the canyon and go play Sherwood in the afternoon. Okay. So that's probably about 1:00. We'll do that. And because you're staying in Malibu, we might have to go back to Nobu for dinner.
Holy cow.
That would be, and then maybe wake up and, you could go to the beach Sunday morning, and maybe practice, hit a few balls on campus before you leave for the airport.
There you go. I mean, there's my weekend. I'm on. Let me check my travel schedule, and we'll make this happen. This is great, Coach. This has been a lot of fun. I knew we were gonna have a great chat. I'm thinking about all the great things you're getting to do now at Pepperdine, but I'm also thinking about just Champions Tour in the '90s. That's a whole other episode. But I hope we can catch up again soon. And it sounds like you are. Well on your way to another great season at Pepperdine next year, and I'll be following along. I know a lot of my listeners will be too, so I appreciate you stopping by the back of the range, and let's do it again soon.
All right, thanks, Ben, for having me.
And there you have it. Special thanks to Michael Beard, head coach of Pepperdine Men's Golf. Great information about the collegiate game. I love the stories about his dad on the senior tour. Hopefully I'll be able to get his dad on a future episode. So make sure that you're following along on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't forget the website is thebackoftherange.com. That's where you can get every single episode in the history of this podcast. I am out of here. Next stop is TPC Sawgrass. I'm heading up to South Carolina as well, then back to Tampa. So make sure you're following along on social media. I'll provide some photos and video. And don't worry, next week you'll have a brand new episode to listen to right here at the back of the range.